We don't just take their money and run like a Butterbar lieutenant lost on a land nav course. Are you finally ready to plant your flag and claim your territory? Maybe it's time to use that VA loan to buy a home. Or hell, maybe you're looking to refinance and put some extra cash in your pocket for more questionable life decisions. Either way, the Veterans Mortgage Source, powered by Canopy Mortgage, has your six. Look, buying a home or refinancing can feel like getting overrun on a bad op. Chaotic, confusing, and full of obstacles that make no damn sense. That's where Corey and his team come in. They're like the QRF of home loans, ready to pull you out of the chaos and guide you to the best program for you. And trust me, they'll answer all your questions. Yeah, even the dumb ones. Whether you're a salty vet or fresh out of barracks still trying to figure out where your TA-50 went. Great service, solid rates, and a team that actually understands the military life. That's why all of us here at Veteran Trash Talk trust them to do right by every veteran in their family. Ready to lock it in? Give Corey a call or shoot him a text at 808-699-7874. That's 808-699-7874. Don't wait. Unless you like overpaying and getting treated like an FNG. The Veterans Mortgage Source is powered by Canopy Mortgage, LLC. All loans are subject to credit and property approval.
Hey, what's up, Mental Health Nation? Hope everybody's having a great Wednesday. Super excited about the show. Sorry we got started a little bit late, but that happens sometimes. I want to thank my guest, Brian McCork from the Able channel, for coming on today. Super excited to have him back on the show, and you guys will get the backstory about how I know Brian and everything. And if you watch the promo that I made, you know that with the Surviving Suicide series, we won an Emmy last year, but then he's got a big announcement that he's going to talk about here in a little bit. But before we jump into all that, I got to make it around the horn here. So you see the QR code up there for Freeze Across America. You can scan that QR code, and for a little $15, $20, you can donate a wreath to ensure that the veterans are memorialized during the holiday season. You know, Christmas is right around the corner, and I'm super proud to be part of that project. You know, along with that, as you may or may not know, you can personalize that wreath too if you have a loved one or a friend and you want to memorialize them. But scan that QR code. It really helps them out with what they do in their mission. And along with that, if you don't know, but if you watch the show regularly, you should know, Reads Across America also has a radio show. And the radio show replays my podcast Fridays at 8 p.m. and Sundays at 10 p.m. And it's super easy to find. You just download the iHeartRadio app, the TuneIn app, or the Odyssey app. And you search for Reese Across America Radio for not only this great podcast, but all the great podcasts and all the great music that they play. You know, I talk about it quite a bit. The holiday seasons are around the corner, and I talk about 10th Mountain Whiskey and Bourbon. It's the best bourbon I've ever had. I was a Scotch drinker, but sadly they turned me a little bit. So, hey, scan that QR code. We'll throw the website out there. Well, we don't have a QR code. We'll throw the website out there and give you a little code to save a little 10% on your order there. But give them a look-see. They got really good, not only just bourbon, they have really good cordial. They won a lot of awards for it. And, you know, you always want to drink responsibly. And, you know, watch out for your friends, but use the code VTT and you can save 10%. You know, with the video that you saw right before the program started with Veterans Mortgage, you know, interest rates are coming down. It's a good time to maybe refinance your house or look at your VA loan if you hadn't looked at that for the first time. So please give Power by Canopy Mortgage a look. You can scan that QR code. Even if you just have questions, they'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions you have. But scan that and they'll be more than happy to help you. You know, with the Navy, and I found out this, you know, unlike the Army, who PCS is in the summertime usually only, the Navy PCS people all the time. And so I got friends of mine that are getting ready to PCS here in February, but they're going to Japan. However, Some of my friends found out last year that they were PCSing to Germany, but then they got changed to Hawaii. And PCS Paradise can help you out there. If you are being PCS to Hawaii, you scan that QR code. They'd be more than happy to find that perfect place you have for the 3 years that you're spending in Hawaii. And so scan that, and they'd be more than happy to help you with that. If you also would like to sponsor my podcast, please reach out to me at clifford.w.bauman@gmail.com. And we'd be more than happy to talk about you with that. But enough about that. I would like to introduce Brian. He's the CEO of the Able Channel. And if you don't know anything about the Able Channel, I'll share the link with him. But Brian, could you just take a couple minutes and kind of introduce yourself to the audience and tell them about the Able Channel and what it's about? And then we'll just kind of jump into our conversation.
Sure. Thanks, Cliff. Thanks for having me on again. It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to have you on.
Absolutely. The last time we saw each other in the States, we won the Emmy Award together.
I still can't believe that my older son talks about that, and I'm sure your son does too. That was just the most amazing experience. But to be there with you, Brian, and know, when you decided to do the series Surviving Suicide and what it meant to you, and be able to share that moment with you. And it also kind of validated, me telling my story and the pain and issues that it caused, in doing so, that it was the right thing to do. And, mental health is a big problem. Yes, David, loneliness is a problem with mental health, and it can really compound that during holiday season. So thanks for throwing that comment out there. But go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so that was a great night, of course. And I have to say that, you sharing your story as well as the other 5 folks that we interviewed for the series, you have to rest assured that it's made a huge impact in the lives of thousands of people. We've gotten lots of emails and direct messages saying that the program saved their life. So, with suicide being the leading cause of death for males under the age of 30, we need to be talking more about mental health, not less. Yes. And so, it was very gratifying for us to win that award and for you to get that recognition as well. But we couldn't have done it without you. So I really appreciate that. And as you know, the whole team at Able Channel does. With respect to Able, so Able is the Hollywood pitch is it's kind of Netflix meets healthcare. Yeah. So it's a streaming service that's 100% dedicated to healthcare content and specific to behavioral health and mental health content. This is this program that we produced with you was the first and hopefully a series. Like we can continue to produce another season of Surviving Suicide because the response has been so positive.
Yes, fingers crossed. I think it's very necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that's so important to note about that series that I was not aware that suicide is treatable. I mean, the ideation is treatable, and the idea of having a plan to not commit suicide was a really important thing. We had the behavioral health group from Cleveland Clinic, be featured in that series. And one of the things that people talk about oftentimes is the plan to commit suicide. And they introduced us to the idea of having a plan not to. So if you're feeling suicidal or you're feeling, depressed or anxious or dealing with some PTSD, the goal would be for you to know what to do when you're feeling that way, who to reach out to, whether it's police or a loved one or a doctor or a friend to help you navigate whatever you're feeling. I thought that was a really important outcome. And many people, including the folks at NAMI in Washington, said that this program will save lives. And we know that it has because it gives you a lot of guidance. You're not alone. And, this is a very common thing, unfortunately, in today's world. But we need to destigmatize it, right? We need to talk about it. And you were gracious enough to tell your story. And I can tell you it's saved multiple lives. So I appreciate it.
And I say that all the time is, the little bit of pain and anxiety and depression and all those things you go through when you tell your personal story. It's worth it if I can save one person from taking the same path. And I talk about that on my podcast all the time. I'm nobody special. I'm no different than any ordinary person. I just gone through some, bad things, was able to survive it, and God willing, had the strength to talk about it, to try to help other people. And I think that's the same thing that the Able channel is doing, and that you're doing also, Brian. And you bring up a good point. And I texted out there, what a great idea to have a plan to live, because sometimes we forget that. And it's so simple, but it's something we always forget.
Yeah, that's a great way to phrase it. A plan to live.
Yeah,
absolutely. I learned so much through that series. I had somebody close to me commit suicide, and I always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to, you feel powerless when that happens. And I'm sure there's lots of folks that are listening would, know somebody. The idea that they leave a suicide note. And my thought was, what if we could talk to people who ideated about it but didn't follow through?
Yeah.
And so by getting to people who had been there, like yourself,
yeah,
there's a level of authenticity there, and also that you have gone on to lead an amazing life, to impact so many others with your experience. That's the hope that you need, right? Clearly people need help, but they also need hope. And those two elements, I think, come through in that series, in spades. So once again,
absolutely. And listening to, the other, was 6 stories in all, I think, and the other 5 stories are pretty impactful, because, you have stories of, parents that lost someone. You have stories of people with different mental conditions, and what they dealt with. And so it's just not my story, but it is an amazing series. And if anybody's out there, and you're watching it, it is free to stream on Roku, right? And Apple TV now.
Yeah, it's on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and I can put the link in your chat as well for people to log on to Able channel. It's free to stream. Absolutely, we want to reach as many people as possible.
And of course, with that, comes with cost, but they can't put a cost on a human life. Before we started the show, Brian, I was telling you about an incident that I'm gonna have to take care of when we get off here. There was a friend of mine that left a voice message to another friend of mine, and it was kind of disturbing. And I talked with my friend about it. And so this is, and I want to say this because it's important. When somebody leaves you a message, it's a longtime friend, and they're going through something, and you've known them for a long, long time. Sometimes you miss the words and things that they are saying. And, it's important to, when somebody's going through things, is to listen to their words and listen to their tones. And as I listened to this message, and I won't go into detail about it, but she did say some things that were very disturbing, like, hey, girl, don't worry about nothing about me right now. I'm fine. My sister's out of town, but, she'll be back in town. I won't have the responsibility of watching my niece. And then she was saying, everything's okay, but, I can't wait to get out of here and get back to my crib and, be alone and but don't worry about me. Everything's okay. Nothing's going to happen. And then, but her tone and her voice told me something different. And so I reached out to my friend and said, hey, re-listen to this message. You've known her for a long time. I've only met her once. And let me tell you, and listen to it again, and then tell me what you think after I told her what I told her. And she's very concerned now. And so we're going to do a 3-way call with her after this podcast to help. It'd be midnight here, 12:30, but, it doesn't matter to me. I'll sleep whenever I get tired. But, it's just very important to listen to what people have to say, even if you've known them for a long time. Because if they've been depressed and going through a lot of things, and maybe they have some other mental health issues, if something just doesn't seem right in their words and what they're saying, it can really be an indicator. And, for somebody who survived suicide as myself, sometimes you leave a message hoping somebody would realize what you were saying. And I really hope that this is the case when I get done with this case and call her, because it is very important. And, I think one of the things I want to talk to her about is a plan to live, just like we were talking about earlier, because I think that is important. Because she was saying things like, I feel like my life's been a failure. I feel like, my sister's, has been successful and I haven't done this. And I think she's taking herself down a rabbit hole. But it's the holiday season. It's a rough time for a lot of people out there, and so just to take a minute to listen and to talk to somebody and take the time to show that you care. And I've only met this person once, but I'll talk to her all night long if I have to. But that's what we do, Brian. That's why you did the series. And one thing I like to talk about too, and we can talk about all kinds of things, is since we won the Emmy last year, the 660 Emmy Awards, which is still pretty amazing. I still can't believe it. When I scroll through my phones and I see the pictures and kind of the joking pitch you did with Paul there and the thing, it was quite funny. It's pretty amazing. And, you guys have been successful again with another project you worked on. And if you wouldn't mind telling people about that, because I did watch the promo to it. You told me how I could get to watch the full series, and I'll watch that too. But it's a series calling, what's it called?
It's called Forgetting 9/11.
Forgetting 9/11,
yeah. Which I know was an important day in your life
yes.
and part of your story. And I really hadn't really put the two shows together in terms of what I was thinking at the time of when we created this program. But Forgetting 9/11 is about a gentleman, John Crittenden is his name. And John was in the South Tower on 9/11. And he, basically escaped the tower before it collapsed in New York. And John didn't realize it, but he tells his story that he lived with PTSD from that day forward for years. We're coming up on the 25th anniversary of 9/11 next year.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, I cannot believe it. But imagine if you think about that day, if you close your eyes and said, what comes to mind? And I'm sure you feel the same way with your experience at the Pentagon. Was what John described is, he's trying to forget 9/11 and everybody's trying to remember it, right?
Yeah.
And he's trying to move forward, but the PTSD, which he did not realize what it was, and it's now becoming more and more in the conversation.
Yeah.
That trauma, any kind of significant trauma, can cause PTSD, and that could be assault or car accident or some other catastrophic event. Certainly in combat, there's the PTSD that people spoke about from veterans coming home from the wars. Ultimately, the idea that for John was that he describes basically building his life up and tearing it down over and over and over again with his relationships. And then he lands on the idea, and it is true, you don't ever really recover from PTSD. It's something you learn to live with. And you have to change the way you think in response to your body's trauma's response to, its fight or flight and anxiety. So, this particular program is riveting because it's just John telling his story.
Yeah.
And by doing it, the same thing with you. He essentially, is bearing his soul, but for the benefit of others, right? It's telling his story of trauma, but also that there's hope and there's things you can do to help mitigate this issue. But it's not something you ever really get over.
No.
Yeah. So I appreciate you letting me talk about it because it is important. PTSD is often misunderstood. It's really destructive, and it impacts people's careers. There's a lot of fallout from it. So the fact that John was able to tell us, especially against a backdrop of what happened on that particular day, was really important.
And it's you bring up a good point. Is for PTSD for a long time, people associate it for being at war. And, it's like it's a traumatic event, and it's a traumatic event on how you define it. And, I talk about this all the time on the podcast is that, when you get triggered, it takes you right back there in a second. And those triggers normally don't happen when things are going good. Those triggers happen because something's going bad in your life, and then you have to learn to deal with it. And it can be debilitating. I mean, it can absolutely take you down roads. And I'm sure John talked about this on the program. He did talk about it a little bit in the promo. I watched it. It can take you down some horrendous roads and horrendous paths. And you're right. You will build yourself up, and then all of a sudden you get paranoid of your success, and then you'll go right back down because you're scared of it. Because you're scared of it because you think something like what happened on 9/11 is going to happen again. And if you had a traumatic event in your life and you could be out in the backyard and the wind blow a certain way, a stick will break, or fireworks, or a smell is one thing, Or maybe you just at night you're having a dream and you dream about something and you wake up in the middle of the night in cold sweat, because you dreamed of it. And I said, you have to learn how to deal with those triggers, because if you don't, they're going to take you down a hole. And I know what that hole is because it almost cost me my life. I mean, if my brother not had found me, I wouldn't be sitting here. And I'm sure John, I haven't listened to his whole story, but I will. I'm sure he's had similar experiences with it.
I mean, I'm happy to introduce you to John. I think he could be.
I'd love to have him on the show. I'd love to have him on the show.
No doubt. I think, you both experienced something from two different angles, right? On 9/11.
Yeah, that would be an interesting show to have his perspective being at the World Trade Center, my perspective being at the Pentagon, which I say this all the time. I think I even said it on the program. I couldn't imagine being at the World Trade Center. As traumatic as the Pentagon was, and as much as I saw, you do that 100 times fold just for the amount of people and what went on there is completely different. Doesn't make it any worse or better. It's just different experiences with it. And that would be nice to talk about with him about his experience afterwards and how that took him down a path, because you don't realize that you're going on a path. A traumatic event will happen and your brain will shut things down. And then all of a sudden, little pieces of your life starts falling apart, but you don't understand why. And you can't explain to people why. And that's the hard part.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I'm surprised I hadn't thought of this earlier to get you two together, because what you describe and what he described are very similar. And with respect to John, the things that you just mentioned, the small things that will trigger him, especially being in a confined space, it brings him back to the stairwell, right? Going down the stairwell to get out of the building. Thinking that the building is going to come down on top of them. Imagine the claustrophobia that you would feel from that situation. But, the other thing that I also, it dawned on me, and this has been substantiated by lots of studies now, is that trauma is now generational, right? It's always been. It actually, whether back in the days of the caveman, we're triggered by certain images, a wolf or a lion or something like that. It's built into your DNA for you to be, recoil. Yeah. And, I can also say that, on a personal note, I was not aware of the implications on a generational perspective, right? So your body literally is changed at a cellular level when you go through a trauma. Mm-hmm. And when you have children, you pass along your DNA to your child. That event stays with you, but it also goes and is passed to your child as well.
Yeah. I see that with my older son. Of course, he's 21 in college, and he'll get weird anxiety things that happen. And I know it relates back, when I would have, anxiety. And I never thought about that till you just said that just now. Because it's odd that he would go through certain things that he goes through at his age. But now it kind of makes sense that, it makes perfectly sense now.
Yeah, it's actually, I think the term is called epigenetics. It when life changes you, from a DNA perspective. I mean, obviously it's built into us to then develop that adaptation and then give it to the next generation. So that can be good or it can be negative. Yeah. And I'll give you another example, and it's also based, military conversation. My uncle was on in World War II. He was on board the USS Bunker Hill in the Battle of Okinawa, and it was it was a later battle in the war before they dropped the bomb on Japan. But the his aircraft carrier was attacked by kamikazes, and the kamikaze went through the deck, and basically guys were trapped.
Yeah.
And like 1,000 guys died. So that day he was not on his watch because he was sick. So somebody else had to be in his position, and he lived with the survivor's guilt from that day forward. Now I can tell you that because his kids are my cousins.
Yeah,
they had the trauma that was passed on from him, and he had PTSD. They didn't know it at the time. They said it was
shell shock, or whatever.
Shell shock, battle fatigue, whatever. But now we know what it was, right? It's PTSD, and it does change you, and it changes your offspring.
Yeah, but like with Junior, his stuff comes and goes quickly because one thing that I preach about is finding ways to deal with the triggers when they happen. And of course, being mindful of your body, because everybody's body's different. Of course, I work out all the time, and I think, I'm an avid runner. I run a 5K or 10K almost every single night, and I lift weights. I'm in a lot better shape than what I was when you saw me at the Emmys. It's the pressure living in Italy, right? Because everybody here's fit, they run around, so I got to have the same body. But, really, when I can't work out, it really affects my mental health. And I tell people all the time, you have to find something that works for you. And if you're sitting in a room, like I'm in my front room, I had to stop doing my podcast in my office because it kept waking my son up at night. So I moved out to the front room. But, if you're sitting in that room and you're having those thoughts and you're kind of going down that road, get up and leave the room. We know that scientifically, when you walk through a doorway, your brain resets itself. And it may not reset all of the thoughts, but at least change your environment to something. It doesn't have to be major, something simple. Go outside and go for a 10-minute walk, or go play a video game, or put your phone down and go do something different. Just do something that's going to change your thinking, even if it's for a split second. It can make a big difference. It sounds silly, but it can make a big difference.
No, you're right. And all the data proves that too. Is physical activity is like it's like a drug for healing. It releases all sorts of endorphins and healing properties. So good for you that you do that. And I totally agree. Change your venue, move around, change your line of sight, and also self-talk.
Yeah.
You can, there's a lot of interesting studies that are underway right now. And one of them just recently came out that just by talking to yourself in a positive way about healing, actually they've measured that people are being healed by themselves through their own self-talk. So, whether you're talking to your kids or your wife or, yourself, it actually impacts you at a cellular level. So,
oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was watching a guy on Instagram I just started following. He talks about how your body rebuilds itself, and with positive talk to yourself, you can actually improve your body and improve things you're going through. And it's interesting because when I left the States, of course, I worked out in the States and I worked out here, but don't things change is the food. And obviously, here in Italy, we don't have the chemicals in the food because it's outlawed. But if I go back and look at my photo from 2 years ago to what I look like now, I look 5-6 years younger now than what I did before I came to Italy. And the only thing that changed is the food. Yeah. But one thing I started doing too is the reason I started running at night, Brian, is after I got done with the podcast, I was mentally tired and I would sit and have a drink or two at night. And I just wanted to change doing that. And so I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go for a walk.
Yeah.
And so I changed my clothes. It's 1 o'clock, I don't know, midnight here when we get done. It's 11:30 now. And I just went outside and walked a 5K. I came back and I slept so good that night that now, of course, I don't run in the rain because I don't have to anymore. I'm not in the service. But I'm sort of a fair weather runner, so you guys can tease me about that all you want. But So I do that almost every single night. Everybody here in the house goes to bed around 9:30. I don't have to get up early because I work. If I do work at Kinda, the restaurant, I work nights. And I'll go out, and I just like it's quiet. Here on the base in Griciano d'Aversa at night, at midnight, 1 o'clock, it is just quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And just to go out and walk in the quiet and not think about anything. And they got some bird here at night that sings at night in the middle of the night, which is kind of nice. And so I'm just out walking, and it's just nice. And for me, it's that calming feeling. And so, if your brain's going 20 miles an hour, and I know how anxiety will get you going, the one thing in our lives that we can control, the only thing we can control is our thoughts. But we always allow our thoughts to control ourselves. And once you learn to break that paradigm, it really can be life-changing.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And a lot of meditation is all about that, right? Just to be able to, focus on one thing, and, whether it's your breathing or something positive, your mantra, you can change the way you think. The computer, that your brain is throwing all kinds of stuff at you all the time. The ability for you to say, well, that's just a thing, and actually have it at a distance, it does allow you to start to see it as less impactful to, wow, I'm worried, so now it's going to manifest itself in my body. Well, I could just change my thoughts, then I could in my thinking, then I could change that response.
And as you practice it more, the better you get at it. If I'm having, I have issues in my neck through C4 through C7, right? It's an issue I deal with. That's one of the reasons I lift weights. If I keep my back strong, I don't have issues with my spine. And so I don't lift heavy weights, but I lift enough to stay in shape. And I'm pretty ripped. I turned 56 this year, and I got a 4-pack, and I see every definition of my arms. I'm quite proud of that. But I work out for one reason, for my mental health, but also for my physical being, because when I don't work out, I start having pain and issues in my shoulder and neck, and it creates other issues. Well, when I'm having issues in my neck, I get nerves firing across my chest. But when that happens, it's very weird. And I think I'm having a heart attack or something else is going on.
Yeah.
And that has taken me down many, 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 many rabbit holes. But just like my doctor said, when I turn my head, it moves to a different area in my chest because of different nerves being affected by it. And she says, well, if you're having a heart attack, it's not going to change by moving your head, right? But your brain still takes you there. And so you have to learn to tell yourself, okay, it's not happening. Just, take a deep breath, do something different, maybe stretch, or, if I look at my phone too long, it starts acting up.
Yeah.
And you have to constantly try to retrain your brain from taking you down those ugly rabbit holes. And, it's just like what David was saying earlier about, being loneliness and being lonely. That's the first step to start going down the rabbit hole. And if you are that person, you are feeling a little lonely during the holidays, there's friends that you can reach out to. I know with Veterans Trash Talk, with the Facebook page, you can go out there at any hour of the night, and any veteran will talk to you at any time. And of course, if you're having issues, you can dial 988 or 911 or text, 241 to 241, I think is what it is, to talk to a crisis counselor. There's no reason to be alone nowadays. You can find somebody anonymously to talk to if you need to. And so it's very important to know that it's okay to feel that way too. It's okay everybody feels lonely at some time. You can have 1,000 people in your house and you still feel lonely.
Yeah. What do they say? Vulnerability is strength. And that's something, most guys are not necessarily going to admit that, right? Because of the stigma, et cetera. But it is true. I mean, the strongest people are the most available, right? That's what I've found.
It's very interesting. So, of course, I work at Kinda, the restaurant here in Italy, in the kitchen as a chef, and I become their family. They become my family. But Pepe, the waiter, he's been on this show, and actually his daughter is now my language instructor. She's a linguist. At 21, she speaks 4 different languages and writes 4 different languages. She speaks English, German, Russian, and French. But not only speaks, she also writes it. So I switched to her as an instructor. She's really helping me with my Italian, which is another thing. Don't be afraid to try something new. That really helps your mentality. And it helps rewire your brain. And they say that, even at my age or our age, Brian, the young 25-year-olds that we are, your brain still regrows cells. If you learn something new, your brain can regrow cells. But back to Pepe. Pepe has a bone disease, and his bones are very weak. And growing up as a kid, he spent most of his life in the hospital with broken bones. Now, I'm the complete opposite. I've never broken a bone. I've wrestled, played football, whatever. And to listen to him and how positive he is on the outlook of life, being so miserable at looking out the window and seeing his friends play, and he couldn't go play, but he has such a zest for life. And here I am, completely different, but yet I let the most littlest, stupidest thing bother me. And it really kind of put my thinking in perspective in meeting him. And I think, the universe puts people together for a reason. And so if I'm having a really bad day, I'm thinking, here's Pepe, who's 2 years older than I am. In Italy, they work very hard here. They don't have the safety nets we have in the States. And he's working 80 hours a week, making 1,200 euros a month, right? But he's doing the best he can for his family, but he's the most positive person. Anytime a family comes in there or they have a children, they all go, oh, where's Pepe? Oh, Pepe this, oh, Pepe that. That guy is so positive when really life tried to beat him down and he wouldn't allow it to happen. Now that motivates me.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like he had brittle bone syndrome.
Yeah, something like something with his body is as he gets older. He said he'll be in a wheelchair eventually. I mean, he'll eventually get to that point.
Yeah, I've known some folks that have had that. I actually did an interview with somebody who had that condition. And to your point, I mean, she is as positive as can be. My father used to say, "Don't beat yourself," right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the world's going to have its fun with you, but don't beat yourself mentally. So staying positive is a huge elixir, and you're spot on with the neuroplasticity. You can learn. It's staying curious is the most important thing, I think, at the end of the day. You want to constantly be learning, challenging yourself, like you said, because that'll also, I think, it improves confidence and competency. And you're here to learn, right? That's largely what life is about.
I mean, look, not to brag, but I came to Italy 2 years ago, and I was here not less than 6 months, and I was doing something no American has ever done. My instructor will tell you that. She's never known an American to work in an Italian restaurant in the kitchen. And I'd never worked in a restaurant before. I knew how to cook. I never worked in a restaurant. So don't be afraid to try something new. And you want to talk about the pressure, because kindness just isn't a restaurant. They won awards last year for their pizza, which is amazing, and they won awards this year for the pasta. And I work in the pasta side of the restaurant, and so that's a lot of pressure when the Italians come in. They're like, "What's that? Is that American in the kitchen?" And then the Americans come in and they're also perplexed. And what's interesting though is of course, being from Kansas City, they got great steaks here, Brian, and they were cooking the steaks wrong, and it drove me nuts. And so at least I could do is to teach them how to cook a steak properly, right? And so they cook a steak properly now, and I'm happy because they grill it. But it was interesting because when I do work, sometimes the Italians come in and they're like, is the American in the kitchen? And Pepe say, yeah, he's working tonight. And so they'll order a steak if I'm in the kitchen. So that's kind of a high honor. I'll take that.
That's good. That's excellent.
They don't have me cook their pasta, but they'll let me cook their steak.
Very good. Very good, Cliff.
But, it's always, it's amazing with what you're doing there with the Able channel and getting people to look at mental health and health in general a different way. And I think, that goes back to everything that we talked about on the show tonight. Is it's so important to know about all the different facets of life. And different things that can help you. And when you're dealing with PTSD and other issues or other mental health issues, it becomes very important. And it's very important to have that conversation. And it's very important to know that it's okay to feel crappy, right, Brian? I'm sure most days you're a happy-go-lucky guy. I'm a happy-go-lucky guy. But sometimes you just have bad days. Sometimes you have bad weeks. It just happens.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Hopefully, as few as possible. Yeah. But the other thing that's happening, Cliff, is you probably see it more here than where you are, but I think this is becoming a global issue. Is misinformation over the internet.
Oh yeah.
Is really destructive. And there was a study recently that there's 4.6 billion pieces of content published to the internet every day. So that's new pieces of content. And now 46% of Americans are believing social media influencers over their own doctors.
Yeah, that's
which is challenging. And the reason I bring this up is that, we over the since the internet came out, in the 90s, the rate of acceleration of content coming at us and information coming at us, it heightens people's anxiety. We're like I said before, kind of genetically attuned to look for things that are a threat.
Yeah.
And what we're getting on a regular basis are messages that are threatening. The world's doing this, or this is horrible. This is horrible. And that impacts us emotionally. So you're seeing it a lot with kids being impacted by misinformation and social media. Yeah, it's just a real big challenge. I don't exactly know what the answer is at this stage, but I can tell you
I think
that with respect
to it's just educating them, especially if you have young kids on the internet, to trust your parents enough to come and talk to you about something going on with that. But of course, you guys do know I'm a big naturalist. I'm not anti-doctor, but I am pro take care of yourself. But if you're going to listen to people on the internet, and there's some good doctors on the internet that talk about holistically how to heal yourself, but buy the books and do the research yourself with anything you see on the internet. Don't take somebody's 30-second clip, 1 minute clip over the advice of somebody that spent 8-9 years becoming a doctor. But there are all alternative ways to look at medicine, alternative ways to heal yourself. But as I grew up as a kid who lived off the land and that information was lost and I regained that, it's important to be educated on what you're doing and also being educated on what your body does to certain things, because everybody's different. So yes, what that influence maybe say may work for him doesn't necessarily mean it will work for you, especially when you're going down the herbal route. We don't take a lot of medications in my house. I do a lot of herbal things, but I know what makes my family sick, and I know what heals my family. And then I also know when it's time for my family to go see the doctor. And so it's very good, like anything in life, Brian, it's very good to always have that balance. I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's something we don't talk about a lot, is all the misinformation out there. Because, there's people getting hurt out there and killed by stupidity and people just saying things that aren't true and aren't right. But then again, you need to take the onus on yourself is to go and do the research yourself and find out for yourself too. And I think that's the piece we're missing too also.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go to credible resources. Yes. Oftentimes it's very confusing, especially for, kids. And, we're working on a series right now that's really geared toward children's mental health. Yeah. And, the big issue is this intersection between their social life and social media, which is, it's hard. It's a very difficult time to come up in the world. But even the things that you were talking about, Cliff, exercise, learning, eating, learning new skills, all of those things also can be a positive distraction to an alternative to the phone, which is, seems to be occupying a lot of people's minds.
And sadly, I see that with a lot of my of course, Lloyd's 11. And I see that a lot. Now, Lloyd, he has balanced time with his electronics, and he has balanced time where he goes outside and plays. And because we play video games in my family, we all love play video games. We fight over the PS5, but that's fine and that's okay. But but I see his friends who they literally are on their electronics all the time, and it's sad. And I'm like, it's interesting because Lloyd has a friend, and the friend travels with us quite a bit. And both parents are busy. I get it, right? I'm not judging. Everybody can raise their kids the way they raise it. But when he's with me and we're going out and we're traveling, I'm a big kid at heart, Brian, and you know this. I'm out running around in the woods, building forts, building fish traps, and we do all these things. And to him, it's just like going to Disney World, it's just like, it's just something that's new to him. Well, if I can introduce him to that and make him want to go do something different, like you said, learn a new thing, then it's okay. go build a fort out in the woods or go do something silly. It's like I told Lloyd, I said, if you guys want to throw rocks at each other, go right ahead. You're going to quit the first time somebody gets hurt. You realize that's not a good idea. I'm not condoning rock throwing. I'm just saying. But that's what we did as kids, right? My dad told me to go outside. You can throw sticks at you. You can quit when somebody gets hurt. But hey, Brian, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to say? And then I'll go ahead and close it out. I just want to say thank you again for coming on the show.
No, Cliff, it's always a pleasure to be with you again. And I appreciate your support of what we're doing. And as much as I support you, what you're doing is fantastic. And anything we can do to help, please, anytime.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, you and your family need to come visit us here in Italy. We always have the doors open for you. Anytime you guys come on over and take a vacation, and I'll be your tour guide. We've traveled all over Italy, anywhere from the north to south, to east to west. And you know what? We go places where we don't go to the touristy areas. We go to all the fun areas where they're like, what? Americans are here? What? How do you find out about this? That's the fun places you want to go.
Yes, definitely.
But once again, Brian, I thank you again for taking the time out. Once the show closes out, stay on because we'll visit after the show closes out. But hey, everybody, that's Brian McCork, CEO of the AbleChannel.com. The links are out there. Please go out there and look at the series, Surviving Suicide series, but also the newest Emmy Award-winning series, Forgetting 9/11, and that really heartfelt story. You guys heard my story about 9/11 and being at the Pentagon. He was in the South Tower in New York, and I couldn't imagine being that. But hey, with that, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And just like I said early on, you can scan that QR code for Reads Across America, and for as little as $10, $15, you can ensure their reach donated to memorialize the veterans, during the holiday season. You can also personalize it for a little bit extra money. And, Reads Across America has a radio station. They also replay my podcast at Fridays at 8 p.m. and Sundays at 10 p.m. And super easy to find. Just download the iHeartRadio app, the TuneIn app, or the Odyssey app, and search for Reese Across America Radio for not only my great program, but all the great programs they have. We did share the website for 10th Mountain Whiskey and Bourbon and the code VTT to save 10%. So give them a look-see. And they will deliver to your house. Their website will let you know, but you have to have somebody 21-year-old or there to accept it. But they do let you know if they can deliver to your state to where you're at. Canopy Mortgage, powered by Canopy Mortgage, Veterans Mortgage. You can scan that QR code. You saw the video early on in the program. Interest rates are coming down. Maybe you want to look at refinancing your house, maybe you want to do something to build a new gym in your house. Maybe you want to build a new deck. Last week we talked about the she sheds and the he sheds. So maybe you want to build a she shed for your wife out there, or maybe a he shed for you. But hey, they'll be more than happy to help you with any questions that you have. And if you're not using your VA loan, please start using your VA loan. You're silly not there. You're entitled to that. And of course, I talked about PCS to Paradise. They are out there in Hawaii. And so if you get the luckiest, if you can't come to Italy, going to Hawaii is not a bad second. And so you scan that QR code, and they'll be more than happy to help you look for your new home out there in Hawaii. And why not? Spend a little bit of extra money, put your family close to the beach. You're going to love it. Be less stressful for you while you're working. Your family's going to be a lot happier for that. But, as I always say as I close out the show, we are our brothers and sisters keepers. It is the holiday season out there. People will start feeling lonely. People will start feeling stressed. So let's just take an extra moment and say, hey, if you got that friend or buddy, just like I talked about early on, who's leaving a weird message, just take a second to give them a call and just see how they're doing. Sometimes just a kind word will really change somebody's perspective. But thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again, Brian, for being on the show, and we'll see you guys next week.